Welcome to Lagmansro. This is a beautiful limestone marsh, which is nowadays really nice to mow with a scythe. It wasn't always like that. And a bit later, I'll show you what happens on a similar area like this when you work with a brush cutter instead of a scythe. There is a smaller old limestone marsh here, which used to be surrounded by pasture land. When it wasn't used for pasture anymore, the area became forested. At another place in the county, a road was being built that destroyed another limestone marsh. So, to compensate for that, it was decided to add a new limestone marsh next to this existing one. To create the new limestone marsh next to the old one, they mapped out an area of about 2,500 square meters to start with, and removed the topsoil layer, about 40 to 50 centimeter thick, so that there was just bare soil left. This was in 1995. The trial run was considered successful, so in the year 2000 they expanded the area to about half an hectare in total. This is the old part of the marsh, and this is the new part. Some marsh plants were added in, and some plants spread naturally from the old marsh. The area was then managed with a clearing saw for over 10 years. When the sapling problem inevitably got too bad, the county administrative board, who were responsible for the area, asked us to care for it instead, using scythes. When we first got here, we saw that it was impossible to mow with a scythe. There was so many saplings. It was completely covered with willow and birch stumps that shot new shoots everywhere. The stumps were about 10 to 20 centimeter and the shoots about 1 meter tall. We couldn't even drag a tarp over the ground without tearing it. So, the first thing we had to do was to pull up the saplings with the roots to make a 3 meter wide tarp highway, so that we had some way of removing waste. And then we did a rough cleanup so that the shoots wouldn't be twice as tall the following year.
Yeah.
When we clear saplings, we want to cut them below the growth point, to destroy the roots as much as possible or even bring up with the whole root. In this way, they won't put up new shoots. This is impossible to do with a brush cutter. A brush cutter can never clear saplings in a way that makes the area possible to scythe. And here we can see the history of this birch in the meadow. Here we cut it with a scythe 2021. There we cut it 2022. And this is the growth this year, 2023. And this year we also cut all the root up with a blade hoe. So now it won't disturb the scything anymore.
Jag känner att den är asstor. Den måste gå djupt.
When you use a brush cutter, it cuts the saplings off too high and leaves stumps that live on and continue to grow. So we had to remove them all with the roots, one by one, using axes and blade hoes. It took us about 5 years to get the whole area cleared. And there are always some to remove each year. The scythe does not prevent new saplings, so we always bring the blade hoe to all the meadows that we mow. We usually spend some of the time on sapling maintenance each year. This might look like mindless work, but knowledge of the different plants and experience go a long way, as well as good technique. You learn how to find the roots, how they will behave, and what angles to cut them at. We also need to choose our battles. Some roots are better off left damaged, and then nature will do the rest to break them down. In some areas, the grass is very low and sparse, and then our time is better spent clearing saplings than scything. Nowadays, Lagmansro is a really nice area to mow, but we still spend a few hours every year clearing saplings to keep them at bay. There are a lot of trees growing around the area as well, so we also ring bark some of them to prevent them from spreading in here. At this point, we have been working here for about 10 years. The new area is about 0.5 hectares. We only mow the old marsh every 3 years. So in those years, the total area is about 0.8 hectares. We can scythe the new area in one day with a team of 5 or 6 people. And then we come back about a week later to rake and remove everything. Removing biomass is a crucial part of maintaining any marsh or meadow. That's how we decrease the amount of nutrients in the soil, which gives the less competitive meadow plants a fighting chance. It also allows the sunshine down to the lower leaves that eventually cover the ground and makes it harder for saplings to germinate. This is a marsh with stones in it, which is pretty rare, but it makes the mowing a little bit more interesting and fun. And there is also a lot of interesting plants. Like this marsh helleborine, that is a native European orchid. An interesting thing about the marsh helleborine is that it relies on a symbiotic relationship with soil fungi. And this is true for other orchids as well. They can only grow where there are specific types of fungus mycelium in the ground. The helleborine doesn't carry any starch in its seeds, so the only way for them to germinate is if a mycelium finds the seeds and feeds starch to it. When the helleborine plant is grown, it gives back to the fungus with sugar. And that's what you would call a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship. When we first came here, it felt so hopeless, but now we really enjoy mowing this fantastic meadow with all these small, nice and rare species, and we really feel that our hard work was worth it. One year we got scolded working here. We needed to burn an area, so we made a fire and started burning it. But apparently someone had horses nearby, and they had smelled the smoke and got frightened. The owner came by and was pretty angry. He thought we should have warned them before we burned anything. There was no way we could have known that in advance. It was an honest mistake. But now we have to tell them beforehand if we were going to make a new fire. Of course, we don't want to scare anyone. Let's go and look at another area. This is an area called Styra, and it has like the same beginnings as Lagmansro, but it has been taken care for in a very different way, and it shows. Here, there were also 2 limestone marshes with a large sunken field in between, and they excavated a layer of soil on the field to connect the 2 marshes. At that time, we were responsible for mowing and maintaining the 2 natural marshes, so we couldn't help but look at what was going on in the area between them. There was bare soil there, and some plants were starting to establish themselves. Lots of willow and birch had grown there, and some alder. And we thought, if nothing is done here, this will be exactly like Lagmansro. Lots of saplings and a million stumps. So when we saw that this area had thousands and thousands of small saplings germinating, we notified the local government that it was a good idea to just pull them up by hands when they weren't larger than this, when it was still possible to put them up. So we got actually 1 year, 10 hours for doing this on all this hectare. So every one of this we pulled up so it was completely clear, so then the grass could, we could leave space for the grass. But after that it hasn't been done, and now when they are cleared with machine, we can't pull them up by hand anymore, and it's like still thousands and thousands of thousands over all the area here. It just looks like this. So when these are not cut, they are high like this, and they will just cover the whole area and make a lot of shadow for the small plants. To prevent this from happening, we would have had to continue pulling the saplings up when they were still small. But the county administrative board saw no need to do it more times, because the saplings weren't a problem there yet. But we could see that it would become one later on. About 6 years after we had cleared the area from saplings, we went back there to look again. And by then it wasn't even possible to walk properly through the marsh anymore, because it was so dense with saplings. It was in the fall, so they had been there and cleared it with a clearing saw. So there were stumps everywhere, as thick as a thumb. And the area was full of the cut saplings that had fallen between the stumps and were difficult to rake away. They might have removed 80%, but the rest got stuck between the stumps and remains there, suffocating and fertilizing the soil. And of course, the stumps continue to put up even more shoots every year. Our job is to favor the less competitive plants, and they don't stand a chance when there is so much biomass left behind, blocking the sun and fertilizing the soil. That favors other plants that want a lot of nutrients, but not the rare ones that you want in a marsh or a meadow. When we scythe, we cut close to the ground and remove a lot of biomass. But if there are 10 to 20 centimeter high stubbles like here, you can't cut anything lower than that. And then that biomass also remains. There were good conditions for a nice meadow here, and we could have continued to pull up saplings while they were still small. But now it looks the same there as it did when we took over Lagmansro, because they chose to go in with a clearing saw instead. If we were to go in now and clear the area properly, we would probably have to put in about 1,000 working hours pulling up saplings, instead of 10 hours annually like we did the first year. I know this from experience, as we have done that work elsewhere, like at the Norrköping airport, where there is like a wall of saplings that we move little by little each year. If you're curious, there is a video about our work there too. I hope this video can be helpful when making decisions about the management of limestone marshes, and especially newly created bogs or meadows that have bare soil in the first years. Clearing saws work well in the forest when selected trees are allowed to grow large and shade out the stumps. But in a meadow or marsh, the stumps live on. Cutting them down each year only allows for new saplings to come up in between the cut ones. The smarter way is to take up the small saplings with the roots before they become a problem. And then you can scythe and rake to remove as much biomass as possible. I hope you enjoyed seeing how we work and learn a bit more why we choose the scythe and the hoe for this type of work. Let me know in the comments if you like this type of video or if you have any questions. And now it's time for me to finish the job. See you soon.